Imagine losing everything you've worked for, in the blink of an eye. One moment, everything is normal, and the next moment, everything you love is taken from you. That's what happened to me, and I have to share it with you. I was 34 when the fire took my wife Tessa and our little boy. I was working nights at the frozen foods warehouse. Cold dock, 5 degrees shift, forklift screaming in reverse. Sirens cut through the air just past 3 a.m. I didn't know they were headed to my street till my supervisor came running. Phone in hand, mouth flat. They said it started in the kitchen. Faulty wire maybe. They said it was fast. I still hear the sirens in my sleep. The house was gone. I remember standing on the curb in my steel toes, wearing the stupid company parka with Heron stitched on the front, like a name could stop your world from collapsing. They let me through the tape, sat me down, and said the words nobody should ever have to hear. At the memorial, I didn't say a word. Just stood there, suit too tight, jaw locked. That's when Pastor Pierce walked up, shook my hand like I was a man, not a cautionary tale. He looked me in the eye and said, "Don't turn to the right or to the left." I nearly laughed in his face. I didn't need churchy riddles. I needed my family back. But he stuck around. He didn't flinch when I ignored him. Didn't back off when I barked. He just said it again, like a mechanic giving the same advice twice. "Keep walking, Harlan. Don't turn." It wasn't until later that I realized what he meant. I felt lost, hopeless, like the world had swallowed me whole. I started going to his Tuesday night support group a week later. Didn't talk, didn't pray. Just sat in the back, drank burnt coffee, and stared at the carpet. Pierce never pushed. Just nodded when I showed up. Clapped me on the shoulder when I left. Half the reason I kept going was him. The other half was Marin, Tessa's younger sister. She was at every group, checking in after, leaving Tupperware on my porch, calling just enough to be annoying, but not so much I snapped. She worked at the county school office as a custody coordinator. Dealt with messy families. Knew when to shut up and let people sink or swim. Nights were the worst. Just me, a fridge that hummed too loud, and baseboard heat that clicked like a metronome for grief. I kept 2 things on the shelf by the door, Tessa's old recipe box and our boy's blue toy truck. That's it. Everything else could rot. Pierce started me off with simple breathing exercises, journaling, some first aid refreshers I'd learned years ago on the job. "Small wins beat big speeches," he said. That one stuck better than the Bible verses. Daryl, my shift supervisor, didn't fire me, even though I missed a full week after the fire. Kept me on the overnight dock. "You're steady," he said. I wasn't. But I said thanks anyway and made sure I showed up even when grief knocked the wind out of my ribs. First Sunday in March, I decided to show up at church, sit in the back, and count how many times Pierce said hope. I made it to 7 before he hit me with Deuteronomy. Voice sharp, eyes locked forward. Do not turn to the right or to the left. After service, he caught me in the aisle. "Keep walking, Harlan," he said, clapped my shoulder once, and left me standing there like I'd swallowed a nail. I took the back road home, same one I always took, down under the state bridge, where the creek runs low, and the rocks shimmer like foil in the light. That's when I saw it. Hazard lights blinking up ahead. A beat-up sedan stopped crooked on the shoulder. Some guy hopped out, gray hoodie, dark jeans, carrying a wooden crate in both arms like he was running late for something bad. He walked straight to the rail and chucked it over like it was trash. Before my brain even caught up, my body slammed the brakes. I was out the door, boots off, and down the embankment without thinking twice. That's the exact second my life broke open again. I hauled the crate to shore and tore the lid free. A newborn, blue-lipped and quiet, but breathing. I called 911 and told dispatch what I'd seen. They patched me through to the hospital's on-call child welfare investigator, Blair, who told me to drive straight to urgent peds and follow her sedan in. I followed Blair's tail lights through town, white-knuckling the wheel like it might break free. The baby was tucked inside my flannel shirt, his cheek against my chest, breath warm but shallow. Every bump in the road made me flinch. I kept one hand on the wheel, the other cupped around his back, like I could hold him together with body heat alone. The urgent peds entrance lit up the side of the building like a gas station. Harsh, buzzing, too bright. Blair didn't wait. She flagged a nurse who opened my door and reached in with practiced calm like she'd done this 100 times. The nurse's fingers moved quick, checked his pulse, eyes scanning. Then she said, "Follow me in. They'll get you both warm." But that was only the beginning of a story I never saw coming. What happened next? Well, let's just say everything I thought I knew about family and responsibility was about to change forever. Stick around, because the real journey is just getting started. Have you ever found yourself in the most unexpected place, doing something you never imagined you'd do? That's exactly what happened to me when I found that baby under the bridge. Little did I know, my life would never be the same again. But that was only the beginning of a story I never saw coming. What happened next? Well, let's just say everything I thought I knew about family and responsibility was about to change forever. I followed Blair's tail lights through town, gripping the wheels so tightly my knuckles turned white. The baby's breath was shallow, but steady, nestled against my chest. Each bump in the road made my heart race, but I couldn't slow down. I had to get him to the hospital. I had to make sure he was okay. The entrance to the urgent care was harsh, a buzzing light that felt more like an interrogation room than a place for healing. Blair didn't wait for me. She flagged a nurse, who opened my door and reached in with practiced calm, like she had done this 100 times before. The nurse's fingers moved quickly, checking his pulse, eyes scanning him from head to toe. Then she spoke in a voice that was soft, but not comforting. "Follow me in. They'll get you both warm." I followed her inside, my heart pounding in my chest. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unfold in front of me. I had no idea what was happening, only that I was now responsible for a tiny, vulnerable life. Everything else, the fire, the grief, the pain, felt like it had melted away, leaving just this moment. But even as I tried to focus on the baby, I knew I couldn't escape the overwhelming weight of the situation. Inside, nurses were moving quickly, pulling me through a set of double doors and to a small, brightly lit room. One of the nurses took the baby from my arms, wrapping him in fresh blankets and disappearing behind another set of doors. I stood there, wet, trembling, unsure of what to do next. My shirt clung to my body, soaked from the creek water and the baby's warmth. One nurse handed me a towel, and I dried myself off mechanically, my brain still trying to catch up with the reality of what had just happened. I sat in the corner, unsure of what to do with my hands. Blair came back with a clipboard and started asking questions. "We'll need an initial account from you." "Just facts for now," she said. I nodded, my mouth dry, and I gave her everything I could remember, where I was, what I had seen, how I had reacted. Blair wrote quickly, taking down every detail. She didn't interrupt me, didn't say a word. She just scribbled everything down like it was part of the routine. When I finished, she looked up from her clipboard and said, "We'll do intake under John Doe. But if he makes it through tonight, he'll need a name." The weight of her words hit harder than I expected. I looked down at the shirt, still clinging to my arms, wet with river water and body heat. "We don't know his name," I whispered. Blair gave me a sharp look. "We don't know anything," she said softly. "But we'll find out." Her words stung, but there was something in her tone that made me feel like, maybe for the first time in weeks, things could start to get better. The baby was stable. Vitals holding steady. No obvious injuries. The doctor thought he was less than a day old, but there was no prenatal care. That hit me harder than I wanted to admit. A newborn, abandoned like that, without a name, without anyone to claim him. It made me sick to my stomach, but I couldn't stop staring at the little boy in the bassinet under the heater. He looked so fragile, so small, yet so incredibly strong. I reached out and touched his hand, and he gripped my finger with a tiny reflex, stubborn and unyielding, like he wasn't letting go. I couldn't help but smile through the tears. The nurse smiled too. "That's a good sign," she said. "Hey, bud," I whispered, my voice breaking. Without meaning to, the words caught in my throat like a knot I couldn't untangle. I stepped back before I lost it completely. Blair came back in, clipboard still in hand. She didn't say anything at first, just watched me for a moment. "This is going to move fast," she finally said. "CPS is opening a file now. Until we identify next of kin, we'll need a temporary caregiver." I didn't know what to say. I felt like I was drowning in paperwork, in decisions I didn't feel ready to make. Foster care. Guardianship. Adoption. It all sounded like a distant reality, something that happened to other people, not to me. But here I was, staring down at a tiny baby who needed someone. And for some reason, that someone had to be me. "Foster?" I asked, my voice shaky. "Short term," Blair said. "Just a safe place until we know who he belongs to. Could be hours, could be days." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. It was Marin. I stepped into the hallway and answered. "He's okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "They've got him on monitors and heaters and whatever else." "What do you need?" "I don't know," she said, her voice tight with concern. "I'm at Pierce's still. Want me to meet you there when you're done?" "Yeah," I said, after a long pause. "Yeah, that's good." I went back inside the room, and Blair was standing there, waiting for me. "We'll transfer him to county care once we have a spot," she said. "But for now, if you're willing, I'd rather not separate him twice in one night." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means you take him home tonight," she said, her eyes searching mine. "Paperwork in the morning. We'll set up temporary care then." I didn't even know what to say. My mind was spinning, racing with a million thoughts. I had nothing. No diapers. No formula. No clue how to care for a baby. I didn't even know what he ate. "He drinks every 2 hours and screams when he doesn't," Blair added. "I'll send supplies." I felt like I was being thrown into a situation I had no business being in. But there was no turning back now. I was already in it, and there was no easy way out. It was a decision I never saw coming. Taking a baby home with me, someone else's child, wasn't supposed to be part of the plan. But here we were. This wasn't just about helping him anymore. This was about doing whatever it took to make sure he was okay. And the story doesn't end here. Keep watching, because the real challenge was just beginning. Have you ever felt like life had thrown you into something you weren't ready for? Well, I felt that way the moment I took Luke home. It wasn't just about a baby, it was about responsibility, survival, and trying to make it all work when I had no idea how. It was a decision I never saw coming. Taking a baby home with me, someone else's child, wasn't supposed to be part of the plan. But here we were. This wasn't just about helping him anymore. This was about doing whatever it took to make sure he was okay. And the story doesn't end here. Keep watching, because the real challenge was just beginning. I walked out of the hospital in a daze. The nurses had given me a baby carrier, a few blankets, and enough baby supplies to last a week. But in my mind, I felt unprepared, like I was stumbling into something I had no business being a part of. The world felt a little off balance, like the ground beneath me wasn't as steady as it had been just hours before. Blair had told me it was temporary, just a safe place until they figured things out. But in my gut, I knew this wasn't going to be simple. I was already starting to feel the weight of it, the responsibility, the fear that I wouldn't be enough. And that feeling was only getting stronger as I stepped into the parking lot, Luke strapped into the borrowed car seat beside me. I hadn't planned on being a parent. Hell, I hadn't even thought about it in years. After the fire, it was all I could do to survive. Now, I had this little life in my care, and I wasn't sure I was capable of handling it. I drove to the church parking lot where Marin was waiting. When I pulled in, I saw her standing by the door, looking anxious, but when she saw me, she rushed over with a smile. She didn't say anything at first. She just took Luke from my hands, her arms steady and confident. "He's so small," she whispered, looking down at him. He was still sleeping, his tiny face relaxed, a little wrinkle between his brows as if he was dreaming. "Yeah," I said quietly. He's really tiny." Marin didn't ask any more questions. She didn't need to. She just took him in, walking back to the truck with him, her eyes soft but focused. I got into the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel, and tried to steady my breathing. I wasn't sure if I was ready for what was coming, but I knew it wasn't going to be easy. At home, everything felt different. The house was quiet, too quiet. I walked inside, looking around at the empty rooms, at the echo of my steps in the hallway. It still smelled like the last of the cleaning supplies I had used to scrub away the remnants of the fire. I set Luke down in the bassinet that Marin had brought over from her garage. It was small, flimsy even, but it was the best I had. I didn't have a crib, didn't have any of the things a baby needed. I had no clue what I was doing, but I kept telling myself I had to figure it out. For him. The fridge hummed in the corner of the room, the same annoying sound that had followed me around since the fire. It reminded me of everything I had lost, everything that still felt so far away. My life had been so predictable before. Now, it was nothing like I imagined. I kept glancing over at Luke, his tiny chest rising and falling as he slept. He was so fragile, and the weight of that hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to be a dad. But I had to be. For him, I had to be. Marin came over later that evening with a bag full of supplies, diapers, formula, baby wipes, and a stack of books that were meant to be some kind of baby care guide. She looked around the house, raising an eyebrow as she set the bag down on the table. "This place needs work," she said, her voice calm but critical. "You need to baby-proof it." I nodded. "Yeah. I know. Do you even know how to make a bottle?" she asked, pulling out one of the formula samples from the bag. No, I said, laughing nervously. "I have no idea what I'm doing." Marin didn't laugh. She just walked over, opened the formula can, and started mixing a bottle. "Well, let me show you. It's easy. You just need to follow the instructions." She showed me how to sterilize the bottles, how to make the formula, how to feed him without making a mess. She was calm, methodical, like this was second nature to her. And maybe it was. But for me, it felt like learning a foreign language. Do you want me to stay here tonight? Marin asked, as she handed me the bottle and watched me feed Luke. I looked up at her, seeing the concern in her eyes. No, I said quickly. I think I'll be okay. It's just one night. Okay, she said, though she didn't look convinced. But I'm not leaving you alone in this, Harlan. If you need help, just ask. I nodded, feeling grateful for her presence, but also a little embarrassed. I didn't know how to ask for help. I hadn't been good at it before, and I wasn't sure I could now. After Marin left, I sat there in the silence of the house, Luke in my arms, and tried to figure out what to do next. I wasn't sure how long it had been since the fire, since Tessa and our boy were gone. Days? Weeks? It didn't matter. What mattered was that I was here now, with Luke, and I had to figure it out. I paced the living room, holding Luke close, trying to soothe him when he started fussing. The sound of his cries made my heart ache, and I found myself desperately trying to figure out what he needed. He needed food, he needed comfort, but most of all, he needed someone to be there. And I was all he had. The next few days were a blur of bottles, diapers, and late-night calls with Marin. But it was also the beginning of something I didn't expect, something that would change everything. Stick around to find out what happened next. You won't believe the turn this story takes. Have you ever felt like you were standing on the edge, unsure of whether you were about to fall or fly? I felt that way every single day after I took Luke in. But little did I know, the real challenge was about to begin. And this time, I couldn't back down. The next few days were a blur of bottles, diapers, and late-night calls with Marin. But it was also the beginning of something I didn't expect, something that would change everything. I was learning what it meant to be responsible for someone else's life, and it wasn't easy. Luke cried more than I expected. I stayed up late, tried to figure out how to comfort him. How to feed him, how to make him stop crying. At times, I felt like I was drowning, but then I'd look at him, and the overwhelming responsibility would settle into something else, love. He was so small, so innocent, and he was mine to care for, no matter how hard it got. But the reality of it all hit harder than I anticipated. Every day felt like I was playing catch-up. I didn't know what I was doing. My job at the warehouse was demanding, and the hours were long. But now, I had to figure out how to balance everything, how to provide for myself, for Luke, and for the responsibility that had been thrust upon me. One day, after another long shift, I was getting ready to head home when I got a call from Blair. She was calm, collected, but I could tell something was off. Harlan, she said, her voice steady, we need to talk about Luke. I felt my stomach twist. What now? Was something wrong with him? Is he okay? I asked, my voice tight. He's fine, she replied. But there's a new development. You need to be aware of it. I walked out into the parking lot and sat in my truck, trying to process the weight of her words. We've identified his birth mother, Blair continued. Her name was Raina Eldridge. She passed away recently. I felt my heart sink. Raina. The name hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't prepared for this. Who was she? What had happened to her? And why did she leave her baby behind? Blair went on to explain that they were still working on identifying Luke's biological father, but the clock was ticking. They needed to determine if anyone was going to step forward for custody. And if they didn't, I was going to have to make a choice. I could keep Luke, or he would go into foster care. The thought of that made my heart ache. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to imagine Luke being taken from me, especially after everything we'd been through together. He wasn't just some child I had taken in temporarily. He was mine. He felt like my son. I sat there for a moment, trying to figure out what to do. But the truth was, I didn't have a plan. I wasn't prepared for any of this. The next day, I got a visit from a man named Harris. He was a family law attorney, and Blair had recommended him. He had a no-nonsense attitude and a firm handshake. I didn't know what to expect, but I was about to find out just how complicated everything was going to get. "We need to get things in order quickly," Harris said, his eyes sharp. "If you want to keep Luke, we need to make sure everything is legal. Guardianship, temporary care, adoption, it all needs to be in place before someone else shows up." I nodded, though I wasn't sure I understood half of what he was saying. I wasn't prepared for a legal battle. I didn't know how to navigate a system I had no experience with. But I had to try. For Luke. Harris asked for details about Raina, her family, and any information I might have. I gave him what I knew, which wasn't much. I didn't have all the answers. I just had Luke. And that was all I needed to fight for him. The days dragged on. I spent every free moment with Luke. I'd pick him up from the daycare, rock him to sleep, feed him, change him. It wasn't easy. The lack of sleep, the constant worry. But it was worth it. Every second with him was worth the exhaustion. I found myself laughing at the small things, the way he clutched my finger, the way he looked up at me with those wide, innocent eyes. He was mine to protect, and I would do whatever it took to make sure nothing happened to him. But not everything was peaceful. Zane, Luke's biological father, or so I thought, kept showing up at my work. He'd drive by the warehouse, hang around the parking lot. It was like he was watching me, waiting for the right moment to make a move. I didn't know what he wanted, but I wasn't about to let him mess with my life or Luke's. I had enough on my plate without worrying about him. One evening, I was walking Luke to the car after work when I saw a familiar figure standing by the loading dock. Zane. He was leaning against a fence, arms folded across his chest, staring at me. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer right away. He just stood there, smirking, like he knew something I didn't. Then, he pushed off the fence and walked closer. "I know what you're doing," he said, his voice low. "You think you can just keep my kid?" I stiffened, trying to keep my composure. "He's not just your kid. He's mine too now." Zane laughed, a short, bitter laugh. "You think you're his father? You think the law's going to let you keep him?" I felt my chest tighten. I wasn't about to let him intimidate me, but I didn't know how much longer I could keep up this fight. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice firm. "And neither is Luke." Zane took a step back, his eyes narrowing. "We'll see about that," he said before walking away, disappearing into the darkness. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Zane had said. What if the law didn't let me keep Luke? What if they decided I wasn't fit to raise him, even after everything we'd been through together? I couldn't lose him. I wouldn't. The next morning, I met with Harris and Blair again. They had more news. Zane had been tracked down. He had a criminal record, nothing too serious, but enough to raise red flags. He'd never filed for paternity, never made an attempt to contact Luke's mother. The case was weak. And it seemed like, for now, the fight for Luke's custody was mine to lose. But I wasn't about to lose. The fight was far from over. There were still more battles to face, more twists to come. But I was ready to fight for Luke, no matter what. Stay tuned for the final chapter. You won't believe how this ends. Have you ever reached a point where you knew that you had given everything you had to something, and yet it still felt like there was more to be done? I was at that point. But what happened next was beyond anything I could have imagined. The fight was far from over. There were still more battles to face, more twists to come. But I was ready to fight for Luke, no matter what. I had come to terms with one undeniable truth: I couldn't lose him. He wasn't just a baby I had taken in, he was a part of me now. It didn't matter that he wasn't mine by blood. He was mine in every way that mattered. After that night in the parking lot, I knew I had to do whatever it took to protect him. Zane was unpredictable, and I couldn't afford to wait around for him to make another move. I needed to stay one step ahead, even if it meant taking on more than I was prepared for. The next few weeks were a blur. Between the constant legal paperwork, the visits from Blair, and the hours I spent working at the warehouse, I felt like I was drowning in responsibility. Every day felt like a race against time. But through it all, Luke was a constant, his small hands gripping mine, his little giggle when I made silly faces, his calm breathing as he slept soundly at night. Those moments were what kept me going. One evening, as I was getting ready for another long shift, I got an unexpected call from Marin. Her voice was tight, and I could tell something was wrong. "You need to come over," she said quickly. "It's about Luke." My heart skipped a beat. I dropped the keys I was holding and rushed out the door. What now? What had happened? When I arrived at her place, Marin was pacing in the living room. Luke was in his bassinet, asleep, but she didn't seem relieved. She didn't look like herself either, her face was pale, her brow furrowed in worry. "Marin, what's going on?" I asked, panic creeping into my voice. She took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. "It's Zane. He's escalating. He's been following me, showing up around the neighborhood. And now he's been telling people at work, the neighbors, that Luke's his. That he's coming for him." I felt the blood drain from my face. I had expected him to cause trouble, but this was different. He was getting closer, pushing harder. "I need to protect him," I said, more to myself than to Marin. I turned to Luke, still peacefully sleeping, unaware of the storm that was brewing around him. "You can't do this alone, Harlan," Marin said, her voice soft but insistent. "You need to get the law involved. We need to make sure you're legally covered. We can't let him take him from you." "I won't let him," I said, a determination settling into my bones. "I'll fight for him with everything I have." The next day, I contacted Harris again. I couldn't afford to wait around for Zane to make another move. This time, I wanted to be prepared. Harris and Blair met with me at the courthouse, where they briefed me on the next steps. We needed to secure my legal rights as Luke's guardian, and quickly. Zane was pushing boundaries, and if I didn't act fast, the situation could spiral out of control. Harris was clear. "You need to take action now. We'll file for an emergency hearing to establish guardianship. If we don't, he could make a move, and you'll lose your footing." We filed the papers that afternoon. And then we waited. The days felt longer, the nights colder. Luke was safe with me, but I couldn't stop thinking about Zane and what he was capable of. He was relentless, and I had no idea just how far he would go to get what he wanted. It wasn't long before I got another call from Blair. My stomach twisted as I saw her name on the screen. "I've got bad news," she said, cutting straight to the point. "Zane has a lawyer now. And he's contesting everything. He's filing for custody, claiming that he's Luke's biological father. We need to prepare for a fight." I felt my world tilt. A lawyer? This was getting real, and it was happening faster than I could keep up. I wasn't just fighting for Luke's safety anymore. I was fighting for his future. Do we have a chance? I asked, my voice tight with fear. Blair hesitated. It's not going to be easy. But if we can prove that Zane is unfit, that he hasn't been involved in Luke's life, that he's abandoned him, it'll strengthen your case. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying everything in my head, how Luke had come into my life, how quickly everything had changed, and how badly I wanted to keep him safe. The court date arrived sooner than I had expected. I arrived at the courthouse early, wearing the best suit I owned, trying to look calm, collected. But inside, I was a mess. I kept looking at Luke, who had no idea what was happening around him. He was just a baby, he didn't deserve any of this. And yet here we were, fighting over his future. Marin arrived shortly before the hearing began. She squeezed my shoulder, offering silent support. I didn't know what I would do without her. She had become my rock, my ally in all of this. And I was grateful for her, more than I could express. The courtroom was silent as the judge entered, his expression neutral as he sat down. Zane and his lawyer were already there, sitting across the room. Zane looked smug, like he was already planning his victory. I couldn't let him win. I wouldn't. Blair and Harris sat with me, talking me through the process. The judge asked questions, and we provided our evidence, Luke's birth records, the testimony of the nurses and doctors who had cared for him, and the fact that Zane had never attempted to reach out to the hospital or to make any kind of claim on Luke's life. When it was Zane's turn, he stood up, looking like he was about to deliver his big speech. He claimed that Luke was his son, that he was entitled to custody, that I had no right to keep him. The lawyer made their case, but I knew it wasn't strong enough. Zane hadn't been there for Luke. He hadn't been part of his life. And now, he wanted to take him away from the one person who had been there for him from the start. That wasn't right. The judge listened carefully, taking notes. And then, he looked at both of us, his eyes steady. He didn't speak for a moment, and then, finally, he spoke. I'm ruling in favor of Mr. Heron, the judge said. Guardianship of Luke Eldridge will remain with him. Mr. Kinder, you have no standing to claim custody. I could barely breathe. I had one. Luke was safe. He was staying with me. The weight of it all didn't hit me until I was sitting in the car with Luke, driving home. I had fought for him. I had won. And now, we could finally start building a life together. But it wasn't over. There were still more challenges ahead. If you've been through something like this, or if you've ever had to fight for what's yours, I want to hear your story. Leave a comment below and let me know how you fought for what you believe in. And don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the world to me, and I'd love for you to join us on this journey. Keep walking straight through with us.